The hope is that if the democratic process is well functioning, at least things that are way out of line with reality are not going to become policy, or are more often than not going to become the formal view of one or another party. That's the theory, and the theory is often right, but sometimes things that are out of line with reality, they do get believed by one or another party.
Well, so we're in this lengthy period of the political parties pulling further apart, where the Democratic Party used to have people who were liberals and people who were actually ideological conservatives. Strom Thurmond was a Democrat, even when he was very, very, very conservative. And the Republican Party similarly had liberals and it had conservatives. And that was unusual for political parties internationally, but it's how we did it here. That has ended. And in ending, this gets into some research you've done before about if you kind of set an issue loose in a room where there are people of different opinions and in a room where there are people with the same opinions, the room with people of the same opinion will end up with a somewhat more extreme view on the issue. And political parties have become much more like rooms of people with the same opinion than rooms of people with different ones. And so I do somewhat wonder, in terms of that theory being right, how much the structural conditions in which that theory was typically right are changing. And if they are changing in a negative way, whether we think that's kind of a blip or whether we think that's a trend that's going to continue unbroken and get worse.
Let's talk about the phenomenon a little bit. So I did an empirical study a few years ago in Colorado where we got people in conservative Colorado Springs to talk to each other about climate change and same-sex unions and affirmative action, and people in liberal Boulder to do the same thing. And the liberals just talked to the liberals and the conservatives just talked to the conservatives. And it's just as you say that in Colorado Springs, they got much more conservative on all three issues, and they got unified. So there was some differences in Colorado Springs about all three issues. They're kind of squelched as they talk to one another, not only in their public statements, but also in their anonymous private statements after they talked. It's completely symmetrical among liberals. There was some diversity on the three issues, and it was squelched. So that kind of artificial study about like-minded citizens, I think you're quite right, it's happening in government now. So the question for the future, and a lot of it has to do with districting and gerrymandering, is whether the moderating force of diversity within the public can actually help have a moderating effect on both parties. Where moderating, of course, isn't intrinsically good. On some issues, there just is a right answer, it's not moderate. But there are enough issues out there where if you just hear people who think like you do, you're going to end up foolish.